we've been so fortunate to spend time here, being on the land, getting to spend time with such knowledgeable elders, sharing so much of Blackfoot culture with us. And I thought it was really important for us to speak to what we're witnessing while we're here. And what I mentioned was witnessing being in the space, in a very sacred space, where the Blackfoot people would come for their vision quests, and how they would sacrifice for their family and for their community, and really put themselves at extreme risk for the health of their community and their family, and thinking about how we can take on some of that work as teachers in the future going forward, and as students when we go back to the school, because what you've witnessed here, the rest of your colleagues can gain from so much. And I know if any of you are in my class, I'm going to be calling on you all the time. Remember that time when we were out in Building on Stone? And I think you have so much to offer to your colleagues because of this rich experience that you've had. So I think that responsibility for witnessing really is going to be immediate for you when you get into the classroom. So I'm really appreciative of everybody coming here, and especially appreciative of Randy for sharing all this wonderful Blackfoot knowledge with us. Because being from someone who's from a First Nation far away from here, it's so important for me to learn more and more about the traditions of the Blackfoot people. So I'm so thankful of it.
I think of witnessing this trip as listening. It was really cool for me to listen to all of you as we experienced the land together. And in the moments of silence, I found it was the deepest way to connect to the land for myself when I was just listening to the wind and listening to the grass. And then the more I listened, the more I saw. So it was kind of as if listening was the beginning of the witnessing, and then I saw shooting stars, I saw little caterpillars, I saw lots of things that I probably wouldn't have seen had I not been actively listening. And so when we talk about community building, I think that's very important. We all listen to each other, and that's how we understand where we come from and how we make our community strong. And I hope that we all remember to listen to our students because they have a lot to share.
I think for me, what I'm going to take away is just how important it is to be in a space like this. It's one thing to read about stuff like that in books, about Indigenous culture or any subject, whatever we're going to be teaching. But it's a whole other thing to actually be in the space, learn from someone, obviously, who's very knowledgeable, and just take it all in. And I think what I would like to do, hopefully, is when I am teaching, is to take my students and not just talk about these experiences in the classroom, but actually go out with them and experience this together. I think it would bring everybody closer together, and to actually witness and see these things, it'll make much more of an impact, because I know it has for me.
I just feel really thankful, Elder Randy, for sharing this space with us, and just really being connected to the land and the history behind everything that's happened in this area. And at nighttime for me was the best time, just listening to all the animals, the coyotes, the bats even, the birds. Like, it was just so amazing at a certain point in the morning, I think just as the sun is rising, and all the animals just come to life, and you just start hearing all of the life around us that we may not be aware of. That definite connection to the land for my students, I think, as Jennifer said, bringing them out and having them experience it firsthand, you just build a deeper connection, I feel. So thank you.
I'm always wearing two hats, right? You're a student and you're a teacher, and I'm sure you're all feeling that. So, you're learning, and then you're thinking about, okay, so when I'm teaching, how am I going to take this? And so I'm really glad Elder Randy shared this story this morning, because I'm thinking about that I'm hoping that when I'm sharing the news and I'm sharing the teachings, that I can be more often like the older son than the younger son, so that, for the sake of my students, but also to have that humor and humility to do the work in a good way. And I'm just grateful to have this experience out here, and just to keep on learning and building on these relationships we began here this week.
I believe that acknowledging and respecting my students going forward, so that they are comfortable to and open to forming a connection with the land, is something that's really important to me. I've always felt very personally connected to the land, and that's where I find my spiritual healing and wellness is outside and doing things and being in nature. And just floating the river yesterday was tremendously wonderful. We were building trust with each other and finding that extra connection from coming out of that very spiritual, sacred area to floating on our backs and looking at the sky and seeing earth and sky and the water. And you can't hear anything when your ears are in the water, and seeing the images from the rocks in the clouds in the sky. And then it was really moving, and that's the kind of thing that I hope to bring to my art classroom, is that an openness and a receptive willingness to find that connection and grow with that and become strong.
So in terms of witnessing, I would say two things come to mind. One was a respect for difference in terms of time and scheduling. Teachers, we're very much about, okay, when's this all happening and how much time are we allotting to this? And we just didn't have answers to those. But everything just fell into place, which was so beautiful. So that was one of the first observations. And then the other one was asking for permission of nature and the animals for us to be here. And we were safe, so it was beautiful.
Well, what I witnessed also was time. Like, you don't follow I just put my watch on. But the thing is, the things that we do during the day, morning, certain things we have to do. Midday, we look at the sun, certain things we have to do. And then at sunset. But what I really appreciate was, sharing your experiences and the connection that you've made with the land, and also between yourselves. And the friendship, again, I'll reiterate, that is really important in that relationship. But just all of you being here and so eager to learn about the land, about the history, the stories, and how we use this to educate our people, that's really important. I think all of you are going to remember the river crossing, which was interesting to see, but that's okay, because, that's, you're being yourself. Sometimes the river can be intimidating, or the land, but you learn to appreciate that, and that's really important. And what was shared earlier, sometimes we have to make sacrifices, and that's one way of learning. And we learn from our mistakes. That's nothing wrong with making mistakes, because you learn from that. And sometimes you don't do it again, but that's part of learning. And I really appreciate all of you being here and to really enjoy this part of the world, which is really important to my people, and also calling on the ancestors to be with us and to bless us. And again, thank all of you for making me part of your circle. It's really important to acknowledge that, because your circle is very powerful. Thank you.
What probably resonated most with me was just not being surrounded by buildings and being able to just walk outside the tent and turn around and there's a deer nibbling on the bushes, or there's a rabbit hopping around, or birds in the bushes or something like that. And then also looking at the rocks, not just the actual rock art, but because of my geology training, I can see a little bit more into the rocks than a lot of people can. So I was able to discover tidal channels and stuff like that. So that was pretty interesting to see. And yeah, again, just being able to turn around and see something new all the time.
The heart of what I want to say is about the way that everyone's been on this trip. I think that so much of the learning that we are doing, it's bigger than our class, of course, right? It's bigger than Education 530, but it's so much about a way of being, and it started right on the bus, right, with everyone taking care of everyone, and some people forgot their lunches and got fed by nice people next to them. And so that sharing and that caring and that respectful way of looking out for each other started right away, and there's been such a community feeling here in our little village, with everyone just looking out for each other and sharing what they have, everything from coffee to, accessories. And
that understanding that's generated around doing something that for some people is very comfortable, for some people not so much. And if I'm actually, I get quite moved by that as when thinking about that as a learning experience, because if that's what teaching can be, it's so powerful. And I want to acknowledge too what I've seen and thank Elder Randy for, if you share something that's so powerful and so sacred, and to bring people somewhere that means so much, and the trust that's in that process. And I've seen so much respect for that, and people have mentioned how much listening and how much watching has been going on, and I really saw that. And I think that it's a beautiful way to set up learning, is to trust that if you bring someone to something that is so powerful and so strong, that they will, with good hearts and minds and spirits, engage with that. And that's, I've really been watching that, and I'm very glad to have the chance to learn from that, and to see it resonate so strongly with everyone.
The first thing that I learned was, witnessed, I guess, is that we are truly all students out here. We're continuously learning, whether that be learning how to cross the river with confidence, or, respecting the petroglyphs and the pictographs and taking away from that a meaning of your own. Or learning how to lose a wedding ring in the river, perhaps. But that's besides the point. But I think that goes along with kind of what we're learning in this program about being lifelong learners and continuously being open to learn. And I think with all of us actually being willing to come here to learn, I think is really important, and to do that in a respectful way. The second thing is that, right, you have to get out of the textbook. It's one thing to read about it and to see pictures, but it's another thing to actually come here and witness that it does truly still exist, and to bring that to your students and to tell them, yeah, this is real. Like, this wasn't hundreds or thousands of years ago, but it's still going on today.
What I witnessed is just the open hearts and spirits of everyone. I really appreciated how everybody came here, and even though it was out of some people's comfort zones, they just came in with open hearts and just open minds, and really appreciated the Indigenous knowledge that Elder Randy had to share. And on a personal level, just the space it's so sacred, and you can just feel it. And I really love just being here and opening my own heart and my own mind to all the teachings that you shared. And I would love to take my future students on trips like these, just because you can only learn so much from text. You really need those experiences to open up your thoughts and everything.
To listen, to open up, to allow discomfort, to encourage quietude, to reflect, and to accept.
Catherine and I were talking about it last night, just how much we appreciated seeing everybody like, oh, I need to heat up my beans, or I've got antihistamine, or I've got a towel. And that was just kind of a natural way of being for people in this space. And I think this space helped create that. And your leadership, Elder Randy, created that, and sharing your stories and being so generous with your knowledge. The other thing I took was I love taking pictures, because I love being able to share my experiences with my kids and my family when they're not here. But it really resonated with me how much more I settled in to the land and to the experience when we crossed into sacred space where that just wasn't permitted. And I found I was just more present. And then to participate in being able to give an offering at the offering spot, that was very special to me. So thank you for that.
I thought to myself, I'd been told before that Creator gave us 2 eyes and 2 ears, but only 1 mouth. And I thought, that's what I want to do this weekend. And I love to talk, so I don't know how well I achieved it. So I want to be brief, but I witnessed awe, I witnessed community and caring, humility, knowledge sharing, and I think it's my responsibility to, as a teacher, share my stories to help students connect to land, but to also listen to their stories. And I just want to say, hey,
The bit that really resonated with me was the story about Rattlesnake returning to this land and hearing about his separation from this land and sort of the catharsis of knowing he got to come back and add that final pictograph. It's a story about reclaiming this land, so that'll definitely stick with me. And then I think just moving through these animal trails that Elder Randy so expertly found for us and with such lightness of spirit was really special.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to experience a different culture, to listen to so many different stories about, building our community and bringing this into classrooms. I think we see that everyone perceives things a little bit differently, and we'll bring this in with our students because, as we said earlier, we're always going to be lifelong learners, and these students will also have this chance to experience different things with us. And I think it's just an incredible experience to have this.
I witnessed, but more felt, a recharge. Like Megan was saying, you're away from the city, but you're getting so much energy from the land and learning so much from the land. And that's kind of what I want to take away to the students, is bringing them to the land, getting them connected, getting them re-energized about learning, and taking them outside of the classroom, outside of that standard setting, and get them energized about learning and being lifelong learners.
It's so important to set a positive intention at the start of the day, and I think that's definitely something we can take forward to our students, because I think there's so much going on. A lot of people, especially kids, when we're on screens all day, it's hard to have that focus, and I think it's so important to set that intention at the start of the day, and I think that's something that we could easily bring into the classroom and all benefit from.
Everybody has shared some incredible experiences and brilliant lessons that they've witnessed. One in particular for me was we're standing up at the top of a cliff, and it's the end of the path, and I'm looking down over this cliff like, how in the world are we going to get down there? Like, you've got to be insane, Elder Randy. And he just kind of points, and he's like, 3 people, just go that way and see what happens. And I think a really important lesson that I witnessed, that I took from that, was that, you're never really lost. You're never really at a dead end. It's just sometimes you got to look a little bit harder to find a path.
We all experience things a little differently. I remember we were at a rock and Jesse was like, is that a wolf? And Elder Randy, your response was, well, you'll see what you need to see. And I thought that was really cool, especially in our classes. We might not all learn the same way. Students might be going through different things at home, and just knowing that they're going to see what they need to see is important. And then respecting that everyone might witness things a little differently, and that is still so important to share. So it's really great that we've got such a cool group that's willing to share, and I hope that moves forward from here. So I'm also really grateful for this opportunity to be welcomed here and invited here. I think is a phenomenal opportunity for us. So thank you.
It's more of a feeling. I feel very humbled to participate in something like this, and to be able to go out to all of the sacred areas and see some of the stuff that we got to see that not a lot of other people have been able to see yet is quite just amazing. And going and seeing all of those pictographs were just humbling.
The idea of just respect for everything, respect for listening, respect for stories, respect for learning, respect for each other, respect for the land, and respect for the spirits that embody the land. And I think just really carrying that forward with us in everything that we do, not just our classrooms, but every relationship that you make, every experience that you have, just respect everything around you and carry that with you, and respect yourself as well.
I agree with everyone, and I think what I witnessed most this past couple of days is perspective, and being able to gain so many different kinds of perspective, whether it was standing on the other side of the river in the sacred ground that isn't open to the public, and being lucky enough to stand there with you, Elder Randy, and have you kind of guide us on that kind of a little vision quest of our own, really. And to be able to experience the perspective of this whole community, people who haven't connected with the land in this way before, who are experiencing it for the first time, it was refreshing for me to be able to kind of experience that along with them and gain their perspective of something that has maybe become familiar or routine to me, and to gain all of that different connection with the community and perspective on the land and the people and everything else is something that I can hopefully successfully take into the classroom with me. So thank you.
One thing that I think that I found very powerful that I witnessed was the trust. And when we crossed that river, I feel like it was a beautiful metaphor for us coming into this experience as individuals from different parts of the world, city, country, and then we crossed over and we really built a community and a sense of trust. And I think it was very powerful because I was very afraid to cross that river, but to see how helpful everybody was, giving a hand. I sunk into the river at one point. People lifted me out. When we went on that hike, I had people behind me supporting me, and it was beautiful to see that. And then from Rain, having the first aid kits or the antihistamines, and from the scouters checking out those different parts of the trail, I think that was pretty awesome, and that's something that I'll always remember. The second thing that I think I witnessed was that sense of respect. When we were looking at all the rock, the writing on the rock, and there was all that vandalism, and everyone was just so upset by that. I thought that was really powerful. We all have that respect for that to be untouched. And so when we see the writing, the vandalism of these individuals who want themselves to be witnessed instead of witnessing the histories and the cultures of others, I thought that was very powerful. And I think if we take that into the classroom, we need to respect the histories and where everybody comes from and honor the knowledges that they bring, especially for students that come from those different countries that understand things in different ways.
Yeah, I have a lot of things that are running around in my brain. It's hard to capture them. But thank you, first of all, Elder Randy, thank you for leading this. And to all our instructors, thank you very much. And I look forward to catching up with you again later. Thank you to everybody that's here. Just learning from each and every one of you and what you said just now. So for witnessing, the question that I had when I came here was, who am I? Who am I? And that was my big question. And I kind of thought that I believe that we need to have a strong sense of self when we get into the classroom, because if we don't, we're going to get quashed. And I don't mean that, in a, I'm the big man here and you guys all have to listen to me. It's just, I guess, Randy, you said that the land teaches you. And one of the things that I kind of absorbed a little bit here was, I used the river as an analogy. The river is a source. It's got its fountainhead and it has its source. It follows through and it ends where it needs to go. But if I don't have a strong sense of self, then that fountainhead doesn't know which direction to go. And at the end of each of those little streams, maybe a little drop here, a little drop there. I'm not a good source for the children in my classroom or the people in my life. So that was something that I was like, the land is teaching me in a different way, but it's still teaching me. And I need to be like this river. The strong sense of self evidenced itself in, I set up my tent all by myself, and I was able to see some of the strengths that I have. And yet I learned the true sense of humility as well. Not that false sense of humility where I'm a martyr, but that humbleness. You can't help but look at these rocks and be humbled by this. I'm not the end all and be all here. Look at these majestic things it's just such a wonderful place. And I've also learned about mistakes and making mistakes, and how humor is a big part of learning, because the mistake that I make, I would want to make the mistake and not be quashed underneath of that, the weight of that mistake. I don't want to stop in my tracks and be fearful to take the next step. I would also like to extend that same grace to anyone else who makes a mistake and say, it's okay, keep going. I've learned that it's not just me, it's a sense of community that I'm also a very big part of. And by myself, I'm nothing. So I thank each and every one of you, and I look forward to the rest of the year.
One of the things that I have witnessed on this trip is the importance of more of a physical or even a spirit understanding of what you're doing, not in the brain but in the body, and in the sense of wholeness that nature brings to you. The difference between intelligence and wisdom, you might say. And I think that it's a very important lesson that both are vital for the well-being of our future students and ourselves as we move forward into this career. And that's what I will witness. And I've been exceptionally grateful for both, because Elder Randy, you've allowed my questions, and I've been able to fill my need for intellectual stimulation, and then floating down the river, you just feel more of a fullness of spirit, as someone said.